So, your offer has been accepted. What's the next steps? Well, you're going to get your earnest money deposited, but the big thing on the agenda for this week is doing your home inspections. And here in Oregon, there are 5, 6, 7, 8 really common inspections that we're going to have done depending on the circumstances. Let me tell you a little bit about them. So the first and most important inspection to have done is the whole home inspection. We're going to do this kind of inspection on older homes and even brand new construction. You would be amazed at how many things they can still find. Now they're going to go and do a once over of the house. They're going to go up in the attic. They're going to go in the crawl space or basement. They're going to check for drips under the sink and make sure that there's power behind that outlet. They'll look at the electrical panel and all the other aspects of the home that they can see. They're going to see a lot of things that you and I just would miss. And this gives you an idea of the condition of the house and what repairs might be needed. Now the cost for a whole home inspection in the Portland market is around $400 or $500 for the basic, and they go up from there depending on the age of the home and the size. Larger homes, older homes tend to be more expensive. Also, if there's additional outbuildings or ADUs you want to have looked at, that costs a bit more. Now the second inspection we want to have done for every home that's hooked up to city sewer is we want to have a sewer scope. And this is where a plumber or a home inspector sends a camera from the sewer cleanout at the exterior wall of the house out to the sewer main at the street. Now most houses will have a cleanout like this, but in some older homes there was never one installed, and they may have to go through a vent pipe on the roof or actually remove a toilet to get a camera down there. But they're going to send a camera down the line. They're going to look for tree roots. They're possibly blocking the line or breaks. Now these sewer lines can be many different materials, and some of them are quite old and in very fragile or damaged condition. Now replacing or fixing these sewer lines can be expensive. Sometimes they're under streets, sometimes they're under sidewalks. So we want to make sure that the sewer line is in great condition and that all the waste is flowing out to the sewer main like it should. The last thing we want is a backup into your bathtub or shower in your brand new home. The cost for a sewer scope is usually between $100 and $200, depending on if you're having your home inspector do it or a licensed plumber. Since we're on the topic of waste, let's talk about septic systems. Many homes in the Portland area on larger or more rural lots are on septic systems instead of on city sewer. And if that's the case, we'll need to have the septic tank pumped so we can do an inspection. Now usually the cost of pumping is paid for by the seller so that the buyer can then do their inspection. They happen at the same time, usually by the same service provider. The pumping can be anywhere from $500 to $1,000 depending on the size of the tank, but the expense is usually to the buyer for the inspection portion of it. $300, $400, $500 is pretty typical. Let's talk about radon. Radon is a colorless, odorless gas that results from the breakdown of radioactive materials in the rocks under the soil, releasing a carcinogenic gas. You won't know it's there until you have it tested. And this is in the air we breathe every day in very, very low quantities. But it can build up and condense in basements and crawl spaces if the area is not properly ventilated. So especially for homes that have basements, we want to have a radon test done. And they leave the test kit there for about 2 days, and then they measure the average radon during that period of time. Now, if the radon results are low, there's no problem. If they're high, radon mitigation equipment may be required to reduce it to safe levels. Now, breathing that radon gas at the elevated levels for a day or two is not a big deal. But over years of living in that space, it can cause health problems. The cost of a radon test is again between $100 and $200. It's a minimal expense just to be sure you won't have problems down the road. Let's talk about underground oil tanks. Many older homes in Portland had furnaces that would run on heating oil or kerosene, and these tanks were buried alongside the houses. Now, many of those homes have been updated to natural gas, propane, or electric heat pumps, but the underground oil tank is still there and in many cases has not been properly decommissioned. So we'll want to do a search and we'll make sure that there are no oil tanks on the property that have not yet been decommissioned. If we find one that has not been decommissioned, we're going to want to do soil samples around the tank to make sure that none of the kerosene or heating oil has leaked into the soil and created an expensive environmental mess to clean up. The cost of an oil tank search is only about $200, and this can save you a ton of money because cleaning up an oil spill in your front yard can cost tens of thousands of dollars. If your home is not connected to city water, it probably has a well, and so we're going to want to have that inspected. We're going to test the water quality to make sure that there's no arsenic or nitrates or bacteria in the water, and we're going to make sure that everything is functioning properly. Cost for that is a few $100s depending on which tests we decide to have done, and can take a little bit longer as we're waiting for lab tests to come back on the water quality. Now, if you're using a VA loan to buy the house, there will also be a requirement for a pest and dry rot inspection. This is going to check for termites or potential rot damage to the house. It's a little bit extra money, but is required by the VA. If you live in an area where termites are common, you might want to do this test anyway, but it is required if you're using a VA loan. So the total cost for inspections can really vary depending on the circumstances. We're always going to want to do the whole home inspection. If we're on city sewer, we'll want to do a sewer scope. If there's a basement, we'll want to do radon. And if it's an older home, we'll want to do an oil tank search. Obviously, well and septic are dependent on whether the home has those. Total cost can be anywhere from $700 or $800 up to $2,000 depending on the circumstances. These home inspections are a little bit of an investment, but they will give you a ton of peace of mind so that you can move forward with the purchase with confidence. And if you have questions or need recommendations for home inspectors, please give me a call.